To the lecture, everyone. Today we are going to do a brief introduction into hieroglyphs, specifically looking only at Middle Egyptian, which we will talk about what Middle Egyptian is in comparison to all other types of ancient Egyptian languages. First, we're going to do a very quick introduction. We're going to start with a brief history of hieroglyphic language and all the different dialects. Middle Egyptian is the only one that we're going to talk about because that is technically the only one that I know. And I know how to actually translate. And many of them are very close, but not the exact same. So we're only going to be technically reading Middle Egyptian. And then we're going to go very simply, like step by step with the grammar. We're going to look at how the glyphs themselves kind of formed and how they are semi-close to actual letters and then how they are also not. We'll also do how we're going to form the words together and which ways do you write hieroglyphs. And finally, we'll move on to sentence structure. I don't want to overwhelm you guys. We're only going to learn 3 different types of sentences, just to keep it simple. 2 are going to be verbal sentences, and 1 is going to be an adverbial sentence. And there are lots of different forms. They get extremely more complicated and more common at different times of ancient Egyptian history, but we're only going to focus on 3 of the kind of regular ones. And then I have not actually prepared you guys sentences, but we are taking from my good old trusty notebook from when I was in grad school to pull some actual sentences that you guys are going to try out for yourselves. And I've already said a little bit, that part is going to be a little bit more flexible discussion because this was a lecture I did in 2021. I tried to find this lecture. I lost any sort of notes or anything I had about this lecture, so I recreated it just for you guys. I have a vocab sheet that is in the resource folder, which for those on TikTok is a link in my bio. For those on Twitch, it should be, and I'm double checking this, it should be resources. Yes. So in that resource folder, there are a couple different books on language. There is James Hawke's Introduction to Hieroglyphs. There is James P. Allen, Volume 2, which my professor recommends Volume 2 over any other volumes that you are more than welcome to download and take with you. There is also the alphabet chart, which we will talk about, and there's a specific vocab sheet which I made for this lecture in 2021, but I don't know what sentences I made this vocab sheet for. So we're going to have to figure it out kind of on our own. But I have plenty of sentences. I have plenty of things that we can test. I have my tablet, so I'm going to write some lines for you guys. Yeah, and so we'll do little like quiz exercises at the end. So welcome on in. So let's get started with a brief history of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs and what we know as the ancient Egyptian language. Ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs was a formal writing system used in ancient Egyptian for writing the variety of different ancient Egyptian dialects. It's made out of a combination of ideographic, logographic, syllabic, and alphabetic elements. I will define these all for anyone who needs the extra help because I don't know what these things are originally. An ideograph or an ideographics are symbols that are used with any given writing system to represent an idea or a concept in that given language. A logograph is a written character that represents a semantic component of a language, such as a word. Then the language also contains both like syllables, just like a lot of other languages, and then the alphabet, which is the more standard set of symbols for that language. For ancient Egyptian, there are more than 1,000 distinct characters within ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, though it does depend on what dialect you're talking about. And if you're thinking about hieroglyphs that are in a regular use, there are only really about 300 signs. There are a lot of different variations of glyphs that will only appear in certain contexts. But when you're talking about kind of the everyday things that are kind of we're using and you see all the time, it's really only about 300. So, for this language, there are some key components that are not really similar to a lot of other languages that you might learn. For example, the spelling of different words is not standardized. There's lots and lots of variation of how you spell certain words, and our dictionaries for ancient Egyptian try to reflect that discrepancy, but they're not always going to have every variation of the spelling of that word. The sentences in ancient Egyptian do not have spaces, do not have punctuation, and you mostly have to figure out what words you are looking at based on context. You're going to hear me say this over and over again today. Context, 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 context. The way that you have to really try to figure out which words are which is really, really difficult, and took me a long time to finally figure it out, because so many words can be so many words are written so similarly with these glyphs that it becomes very, very hard to kind of differentiate them. The syntax, or the order of the words, is actually very rigid, and essentially the combination of both the context, the syntax, and the grammar is the most important tool to be able to translate hieroglyphs. The author of the textbook that I studied under, whose name is James Hawk, again, it's in that resource folder if you want to read it. I find it easier to read than Alan, but Alan is the typical standard for students. He has 3 volumes. According to my professor, volume 2 is the best. Apparently volume 3, he starts going off the rails. But my professor trained us to read Hawk as an experiment because he wanted to see if we could really learn from Hawk. I don't think he genuinely liked it, but I liked it. I liked how, I think, simple Hawk was. Alan throws a lot at you very quickly, and Hawk I really appreciated. But the author of that, James Hawk, once said, "The worst thing you can do is look up all the words in the dictionary, because it just doesn't work like that." Okay, we're going to get an ad break in a second. Okay. For the most part, you're going to have to figure out all the different parts of speech first, and then you kind of move out from that way. So, the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs is part of an Afro-Asiatic family of languages. They are most closely related to North or East African or West Asian languages, but it is its own branch of this, and it is very, very unique. In a lot of ways, it's been compared to Chinese when it comes to the actual characters themselves, but obviously Chinese does not have the same, their script is not so much imaged based, it's more all lines and sounds. As I mentioned, it has lots and lots of different dialects rather than, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. It has many different dialects, although some people are going to reference them as phrases of the language than dialects. I have tended to use the word dialects, and I'm trying to kind of wean myself off of that because it's not necessarily inaccurate, but dialects you tend to use in the context of these things are happening, these languages can happen at the exact same time, when for the most part these are not, like, it's based on time and location, and these ones are more phases because they do semi-transition into each other, and it's not like they are only used at particular points in time, in particular points in like locations, but they're oh my god, the way I'm trying to describe this, it's not like Ubisoft. Sorry, Ubisoft loves me. It's not like that they are all existing at the same time, just in different locations. They are all kind of phasing into each other as time goes on. So So the main phases are split up into earlier Egyptian and later Egyptian. And then they are split into 6 major chronological divisions, which you can see here at the top. You have Archaic Egypt, which is any time before 2600 BCE. And this is essentially a reconstructed language of the early dynastic period. There is evidence of hieroglyphs before this, but everything kind of gets grouped into this Archaic Egypt because it is very, very sparse. And for the most part, like there's little to find out even if there's grammar and kind of things like that. Thank you, Kepper. So, to answer Wombat's question, something about the Rosetta Stone. The Rosetta Stone, I don't actually talk about it in this one, but I'll briefly say the Rosetta Stone, the reason that it isn't so important is not the text that's on the Rosetta Stone, but the actual use of it by Egyptologists to figure out how to translate hieroglyphs. Because it comes in 3 different languages, so it comes in... I actually don't... Well, when was that written? So it's probably in Demotic Egyptian and then Middle Egyptian, I would guess, or Late Egyptian. But it's in hieroglyphic at the top, it's in Demotic in the middle, and it's in Greek at the very, very bottom. And so because all 3 languages had the exact same text, they were then able to cross-reference different words that would pop up to figure out how those words were spelled in other languages. At the time that those were translated, though, it was by far a good translation. Like, they were still learning a lot at that point, and so truly, really only should focus on translations that have been coming out in the last 50 to 60 years. Like 1940s and 50s and on, probably. But there are several things that have probably been translated that have never been translated again. You just always have to be kind of cautious, and sometimes you really need to have that linguistic study to be able to actually get a better translation of what it could be. Yes, so the Romans did eventually conquer Egypt. And we do know that, I forgot to actually throw this in there, we do know that the last instance of ancient Egyptian, hieroglyphs that have been found dates into the Roman period in Egypt, and that we do know that people did continue to know about hieroglyphs, write hieroglyphs, and translate hieroglyphs much like deep into the Roman occupation of Egypt before it eventually kind of peters out. So after Archaic Egypt, we have Old Egyptian, and Old Egyptian is going from anywhere from 2600 BCE to around 2000 BCE. The naming convention in this case is quite simple. It is really talking about the language of the Old Kingdom period, which is roughly the same dates. Then you go into Middle Egyptian, and Middle Egyptian right here goes from around 2000 BCE to around 1350 BCE. So I will note the naming conventions of the languages don't often reference the intermediate periods that we have, like say in between the Old Kingdom and the Middle Kingdom. And that's mostly because we don't have as much information, we don't have as much surviving text from these intermediate periods. And then we also know that there were so little people educated and who were able to actually read and write, or read or write, to be honest. And those people were usually very close to the king and the court. And so if the king and the court are not very powerful, they might not have the means to have people, a lot of people, let's say. But we obviously know that these languages do continue through this. So it's like, we know that these languages are going to keep on going, even if we just don't have a lot of physical evidence from those time periods. So the Middle Egyptian covers the language of the Middle Kingdom all the way into through the Second Intermediate Period and then into the New Kingdom. What is very key about Middle Egyptian is that this language actually does continue on all the way until the 4th century CE. So way, way, way later. So you can sort of see it here. It doesn't, this chart at the bottom doesn't totally reflect what we know, but we know that it was used as a literary language much later. And on like official inscriptions. And that is what this Neo-Middle Egyptian is. And you can see Middle Egyptian down here at this area, but it does continue, and you do see presence of it in theological texts and official inscriptions up until that point. And so, hello Leonardo, welcome on in. You have not missed much. We're just talking about the history of hieroglyphic languages. For our lecture today, we're doing Introduction to Hieroglyphs. So you have Middle Egyptian, which has this like everlasting effect in certain ways. We know that the ancient Egyptian people are not speaking this language after the New Kingdom, after the early New Kingdom, but we know that this was still a very common written language. Hello, Paranoid. Welcome on in. We know this is a very common written language in ancient Egypt after that point. Then you jump to late Egyptian. We don't technically have a new Egyptian language. We skip straight to late Egyptian, which starts in around 1350 BCE to around 700 BCE. And this language essentially starts in the Amarna period, which I find very, very interesting. And it goes all the way until the Third Intermediate period. And I like to say, if anyone thinks that there are things that like Akhenaten or others in the Amarna period introduced that were then not carried on, you can always point to this, because late Egyptian is like a huge difference. It's like this huge, huge language that lasts for, God, what is that? Like 600 years. And that develops in the actual Amarna period. It is continuously used by the Ramessides. It is not kind of shut down at all. It does seem kind of redundant, but the big difference is that these languages are not that different. These are phases of the same language. So I will admit, I don't know anything really about the big changes of late Egyptian, but for example, I know in Old Egyptian, they don't really use something called a determinative, which is something we're going to talk about later, where it's a hieroglyph that makes no sound when you're saying it, but it helps you determine what that word means. And I know in the Old Kingdom, they hardly use them, and those were not introduced until the Middle Kingdom. So it's still phases of the same language, it's just things change in the grammar. I would sort of equivocate it to Old English versus Modern English. I don't know if that's the best comparison, but I think that's sort of might be where it is. I don't know much about like Old English, but I know it is pronounced much different. I saw a video about a woman recently saying that you would pronounce Old English, you pronounce every vowel, and you pronounce the vowels like it's in French, and you pronounce every single one. Or every single consonant. It was like, woo, what was it? Women, or something. It was very interesting. So it just, what it also tells us, Joe, is that only a select group of people are the people who know this language. And they are continuously then training all of those people to know this language. And so for the people who are writing these theological texts and these official inscriptions, they are continuously teaching this exact same thing, but speaking slightly different. And that more shows that the speaking part is the thing that everybody was doing. Even if you couldn't read or write, you could speak. And that's like, yeah, honestly, it's that, when you're speaking, if you are illiterate in other ways, like your language is still going to change and still going to kind of move forward. But when you're only a very small portion of the population are writing, they are going to continue to kind of teach it the same way in a sense, if that makes sense. All right, so after late Egyptian, then you get to Demotic, not demonic, with an N, Demotic. Demotic goes from around 700 BCE to around 400 CE. So this crosses over and covers essentially the majority of the late period, which does confuse people, obviously, because it's not late Egyptian. But covers the late period as well as Ptolemaic Greek period and the early Roman Egypt as well. And we technically consider this the last language that is occurring during ancient Egypt because we have this vague cutoff somewhere into the Roman occupation of Egypt where that becomes then modern history, and we don't, Egyptologists specifically don't tend to study it. And then the last one you'll see at the bottom here is Coptic, and Coptic is not necessarily related to ancient Egyptian history, but it is related to ancient Egyptian language. So Coptic starts sometime after 200 CE, and this is the vernacular of the Christianization, and then it also becomes the liturgical language of the Coptic Church, which is the Egyptian Christian Church. And Egyptologists don't necessarily study this because it is not considered part of ancient Egyptian timeline. Some people use that Christianization as a cutoff of what is ancient Egypt and what is more modern Egypt. But historically, this is a language that is more used during the Islamic period of ancient Egypt. You can see that at the very end of this this chapter or this chart. That this is like medieval Egypt or Islamic Egypt, and that would be somebody who would study that more. But if you're an Egyptologist that focuses on linguistics, then Coptic is a very important language that you have to know because it is directly related to ancient Egyptian languages, and it is something, it derives directly from it. So it is the only version of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs that is still spoken and written today. Granted, it's not written in hieroglyphs, but it is still spoken today as a smaller like community language, and then also as a liturgical language in the church. And so a lot of researchers have listened to how Coptic is spoken today and sort of used it to backtrack and research how some of the ancient Egyptian languages may have been used, may have been spoken. So it's this very interesting like dilemma where like most Egyptologists don't know a thing about Coptic, but linguistic Egyptologists probably know a lot about Coptic because they want to have that extra leg up to see like how you get there. Stephen, I am more than welcome to answer your question, but we are doing a lecture right now, so we're covering ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. But there's a lot of different theories about how they built the pyramids, but the Egyptians built them with blocks and probably ramps and lots of manpower. Specifically, I can't go into more detail about that because we'll be on a huge long tangent, but that is the basics. Bringing lots of different stone locally and bringing some of the fancier stones. No, Joe, we're not bringing it up. But I do have quite a few videos on the pyramids. I haven't made one specifically about the building of it because there's too many theories to talk about, because everyone has kind of their own like specific theory of like what type of ramp, what type of things. But we all know it's ramps, manpower, cutting blocks, copper tools. That's the simple part about it. Okay, so yeah, at the bottom I have this chart, and it has this timeline here on the top of all of the different ancient Egyptian languages, and then has the two differentiates, the early Egyptian and the later Egyptian, and then sort of the rough cutoff times. But you will see that they kind of go a little funky where it's like, okay, Middle Egyptian is split up into Middle Egyptian, Late Middle Egyptian, Medio-Late Egyptian, and then Neo-Middle Egyptian. So there's lots of like kind of stuff all together. And it depends on what type of text. So it's a little bit complicated, but it's something that has been highly studied, and finding like the difference and stuff. No, very good question, Paranoid. So they did not, at that time, the Rosetta Stone was discovered in 1798, I'm going to say. At that time, they had no idea. I don't think people knew at the time that Coptic derived from ancient Egyptian. Because Coptic doesn't look like, when you are writing Coptic, it doesn't look like hieroglyphs. It's using a modern alphabet. I can't think of the word for it, but it's using a like modern alphabet. It's sort of using a Greek alphabet. I think it's got some extra stuff. But yeah, it's that they did not know that it derives from it. I don't know when somebody kind of put that 2 and 2 together, but they did not. European researchers did not know that at that time. So the Rosetta Stone was a really big deal because I will say also, Europeans and like other Western countries had not had access to Egypt like virtually at all before the Napoleonic campaign. So they essentially, Napoleon stumbles into Egypt in 1799 and opens up a can of worms for researchers who had not been able to study and stuff. And it just really, a lot of these researchers kind of started all going a mile a minute to try to figure this out. And so the language itself, like nobody knew what it said and nobody had any idea. They only were going off of Greek texts about Egypt, like Herodotus and Manetho and Josephus and like all of those things. So they had these Greek names. They had Amenophis and I'm trying to think of another one. Khephren and like all of these like Greek names of these pharaohs, but they had no way to associate who that was and how hieroglyphs worked at that time. So, and I will say the Coptic church is also very small in Egypt in comparison. It is obviously, it has been predominantly an Islamic country for many, many years. And so the Coptic church is a very small group of Christianity. And as I said, it's used liturgically, but there's only a very, very small population that themselves continue to speak Coptic. It is more like Latin is today, where you really don't speak it that much. There definitely are pocket groups that would speak it, but for the most part, it is a liturgical language only, at least nowadays. Okay. Okay. So you might not notice, if you guys know anything about ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, you might notice that hieratic is technically not on that list. So hieratic itself is a cursive or shorthand version of hieroglyphs. That's why you may hear me sometimes refer to hieroglyphs as monumental hieroglyphs versus hieratic. Monumental hieroglyphs are the things here on the edge and right here. Like, these are the things that you are more recognizable. You will see, oh, that is an ancient Egyptian hieroglyph. But it's things that are on temples, on tombs. But the text that was used on a daily basis was the hieratic. You can see, I really liked this chart because it shows sort of how things have changed over time. And hieratic is its own beast. I do not know any hieratic. The only thing I know in hieratic is literally, although this is the vulture, I know the symbol for the owl. That's like the only hieratic symbol that I know. But hieratic is what you're going to see on papyri, and sometimes in tombs, but more often than not, you are going to see, sometimes you'll see it as like graffito in the tomb, you'll see it on papyri, you'll see it on ostraca, so pieces of discarded pottery, pieces of discarded limestone, they would have used hieratic. It's what scribes would mainly focus their time on learning is hieratic. You don't need essentially like the showmanship of monumental hieroglyphs. And hieratic does tend to follow kind of the different phases of this language, but the thing that is very difficult to see is that hieratic really depends on who's writing it. And every scribe is going to have their own handwriting. It really comes down to handwriting, and it's not standardized like it is with monumental hieroglyphs. So you can see when certain scribes accidentally spell this word wrong every single time this word comes up. You'll notice that they keep doing it like over and over again, or they draw a glyph a really weird way. You'll see that pop up time and time again. It's very, very hard, and you can see how it changes. Oh god, like it's impossible. You can also see Demotic is a later form. Demotic is not written monumentally, but it is its own phase of the language specifically. Okay. Any questions at all? I won't talk about scribes as much as I probably would like to, because I did do the lecture on scribes and scribal palettes, which is on my YouTube if you want to check that out. And the briefest thing I just want to say about scribes is that like it's such a few select people who had access to become educated and who would be the people doing the writing. And for things like say this piece right here, this would not be written by it would be written by a scribe, sometimes in hieratic, sometimes in monumental, and then usually a craftsman is the person who's actually carving it. And really the whole thing is that like the people who are actually making the art usually cannot read hieroglyphs. A scribe is being commissioned to write it, they'll trace it on the wall, and then a craftsman will come back and they will carve it out. And they have probably, because we'll talk about that, but they're not emojis. So let's talk about the glyphs. This is not picture writing. I want to like make that very clear. Like, I know I see the joke that they're like, oh, these are just our emojis are going to be hieroglyphs of the future. No. You guys will see that there are definitely glyphs that depict real life things. Like in this picture, you see the quail chick, you see a human eye, you see some plants, you see a couple different types of birds, you see the water. Like all of these things, yes, are depicting real life things, which are similar to an emoji. But what you are looking at for the vast majority of the time, none of those things are telling you actually, like, it is not a depiction of water, and that is the word for water. Usually it's not. Like, there are words that there will be glyphs that have an actual depiction of that actual thing. But then there are words that will have a duck and a loaf of bread and a vulture all in the same word, and it will be the word for, I literally can't even think of something silly enough. Book. It'll be the word for book. Like, exactly. This is not, it's not really like emojis, because each word is formed so differently. And we're going to talk about how to form kind of all of these words. That is so funny. That loaf of bread literally looks like the loaf of bread that I'll show you guys in a second. So yeah, there are kind of 3 different kinds of glyphs when you are looking at this language. And so we're going to talk about the particular signs and then how they kind of form words together. One of the best sources I can recommend is to look at Gardner's sign list. It is in that, if you do ! resources, it is in that resource folder, that Google Drive folder. This is my personal copy that my professor made us go to the printing center at our university to print out. It technically is usually in the back of an older hieroglyph book, which Gardner is not now a good source except for his sign list. Like for his actual like educational steps, his book is not the best, it's outdated, but his sign list is very good. You can also go to Wikipedia. If you type in Gardner sign list, there's like a whole Wikipedia that will show you actually how to type those symbols. So actually, I'm gonna bring it up for you guys to see. This is the resource folder if you've never seen this before. So the things that I have in here, I have James P. Allen's Middle Egyptian Introduction to Language and Culture of Hieroglyphs, 2nd edition. My professor has always recommended just 2nd edition, not 3rd, not 1st. This is the basic alphabet chart. We're going to look at this briefly in a second. This is the Concise Dictionary of Middle Egyptian by Raymond Faulkner. This is the actual, if you guys can't see this is an actual handwritten, a handwritten dictionary. But I think I have the modernized version, which is, when I get there, is a typed version. So you can search for words. This is the sign list. So yes, everything was handwritten. For all the best early Egyptology language books are hand fucking written. Because they didn't have typewriters that had all these weird signs, so they had to handwrite everything. So this is the sign list. It goes through all of the different glyphs. I will say again, there are over 1,000 glyphs. This is not going to cover every single one. This is going to cover the basic. I don't know how many there are in here, but basic, usually around 300 and stuff. So they're all organized by sections based on what the actual image of the glyph is. So we have section A is man and his occupations. Then we have, then we have women and her occupations. Then we have anthropomorphic deities, parts of the human body. I'm going to go through all these because they're fun. What's the next one? The next one is mammals. Then you get parts of mammals, is I believe the next part. Yeah, parts of mammals, section F. Then you get birds, if I'm remembering correctly. Birds. Then you get parts of birds. Wait, where's parts of birds? Parts of birds is here, I think. There's a lot of birds. I don't know what to tell you. Parts of birds. Then you're gonna get, oh wait, here we go. What is this one called? Amphibious animals, reptiles, etc. Then you're gonna get fishes, but parts of fishes. Then you're gonna get intervertebrate and lesser animals. Then you're gonna get trees and plants. Then you're going to get sky. I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to guess them before we get there. Sky, earth, and water. Sky, earth, water, buildings, parts of buildings, etc. This is where it gets a little bit more complicated. Ships and parts of ships. Domestic and funerary furniture. Sorry, I thought I skipped it. Oh, here. Temple furniture and sacred emblems. So this has like cloth on a pole, it has standards, it has little wigs, it has scepters, shields. You have crowns, dresses, staves, etc. A lot of royal items. Lot of crooks. Warfare, hunting, and butchery. What's the next one? Agriculture, crafts, and professions. Then we have rope, fiber, baskets, bags, etc. There's lots of different types of rope. The cartouche technically is a rope. It's a rope in a loop. Then you have Boop, boop, boop. We're almost to food. Vessels in stone and earthenware. I love how I'm also scrolling this when I literally have it sitting in my lap that I just remembered. Loaves and cakes. Loaves and cakes is one of my favorites. Writing, games, and music. There's actually not, now that I think about it, there's not a lot of other pieces of food. There's not a lot of fruits and veg hieroglyphs. I don't think we really have any fruits and vegetables. I gotta think about that for a second. Strokes, signs derived from a hieratic, geometric figures. These are all kind of random things at the very, very end. But you gotta think about it. It makes sense because they didn't have as much access to a lot of fruits and vegetables. I don't think there's an olive. There might be an olive branch. I don't think there's an olive. Olives weren't really in Egypt. Olives are more in Mesopotamia, I think. I gotta think about that for a second. We'll look up that word. Then you have unclassified. The best unclassified one is the human placenta, but it's still a question mark. Yeah, there's not very many musical instruments. That's in... Oh, writings, games, and music. I missed that one. So it's got papyrus rolled up. You got the scribe, the draughtsboard, so the Senate board, draughtsman, so the little pieces, and then a harp and a sistrum. That's all you really have. No drum, nothing like that. So yeah, so you got the human placenta in the unclassified section and just like kind of totally random ones. Pustule or gland. Lots of random stuff. And then my favorite part is at the very, very end, you can see all the glyphs next to each other. So if you're looking for one, and then my favorite part is that at the very, very end, they separate them by selection of signs according to shape. So if you're if you see a sign and you don't exactly know what it is, you know it's a long, tall one, you can go and look at it. And they are all labeled by M40. So M is section M, and it's the 40th glyph in that. And so you can always find stuff like that. And so I really loved when I could like have this, like there's low narrow sign, low broad signs, and tall narrow signs. Let's go back to the pustule because I'll show you kind of the next part of this. Is that essentially this gives you a lot of information and can give you a head start of when you find a word and you don't know what it is, because it gives you tons and tons of information. So let me find so here in this one, which we'll talk about, the human placenta is the phonetic for H. For what is that? Fourth H. And so it says phonetic H, but then you can find different ones and it will literally give you examples of a lot of things. It'll also give you variations for, or types of words it will be in. So it gives you a lot of sources to learn all the different glyphs and such. Well, yes, we have quite a few medical texts. So not autopsies, but medical texts, like a pustule, like literally something that is actively infected. They had lots of medical texts about that. Okay, so the first one we've mentioned is the logogram or ideogram. And this is an image that writes the word with an actual picture of what that word means. These are the closest equivalents to an emoji. But it's not always as simple as that one glyph is the entire word of that. There might be additional things, like, for example, this one, where it does have a addition to it. So this is the ancient Egyptian word per. Per means house. And this, although it doesn't look like much, this is depicting a house. It's literally depicting us looking at it from the top, and you see the doorway. So this is our house, and there is the doorway. Specifically, when looking at this word for house, you have to add this little stroke. This little stroke, more often than not, is pointing to the logogram or the ideogram, that one glyph, and saying, this is what this is. This is depicting what this word is. and making it very clear and very simple for you. This is a house. That's what it says. Although you don't actually say this. This stroke is silent. It doesn't have a phonetic component to it. Then you have phonograms. So a phonogram writes the sound, but not the idea for that word. So for example, while pear can write the word for house, it can also mean a verb to go out. It sounds exactly the same. Pear, pear. It sounds exactly the same, and the only way that you know it's different is because of the little legs underneath. And the little legs are the determinative, which we're going to talk about in a second, that tells you that this is a verb that is in motion. It has to do with motion. But that same glyph that is of a house doesn't always necessarily mean house. Even though I'm looking at the exact same glyph that we saw on the last page, it does not mean that it is house. This is just very similar to like when we have the same words in English that are written exactly the same or pronounced exactly the same, but it does become based on context to figure out what word you are trying to mean. And there are 3 different types of phonograms, which we're going to talk about next. So the last type is this determinative, which I just mentioned last time. So this glyph appears at the end of the word, and it helps you clarify what that word means. It helps you determine what that word means. And it is silent. There is no semantic component, no phonetic component to this. You actually say genuinely nothing. This is essentially a silent letter at the very end. It's the silent logogram or the silent ideogram. So when we take the example of the house, if we go back, this line is that determinative. It is telling you that image is what this word is. For the next one, the little legs are telling you it's not what this glyph says, but it is usually a verb that has to do with motion. So it's to go out, to come back, to run, things like that will have these 2 little walking legs glyphs. Yes. And then in this case, the image of the house, the glyph of the house, is the determinative for this word for room. At is what this says. At. At is the word for room, and the hand is the ah sound. The little bread loaf that you see here is the T sound, but the house makes no sound, but it tells you, hey, this is related to a house. This is related to it. It's not actually the word for house. This does not bring over that phonetic component of pair. It's just a determinative. But you have to figure that out because remember, there's no spaces to know where words begin or where words end. There's no periods to know where a sentence ends and where a sentence begins. And so all of these things get complicated. Get very, very complicated. Paranoid, you brought up a very funny thing. There are actual combination glyphs where the full legs have been attached to another glyph. And those are also used in words for motion. But instead of having just the 2 glyphs next to each other, they actually combine it. So like there's a glyph of a knife that has legs attached to it. There's a glyph of a pot, a little stone vessel that has legs to it. Like there are lots of different things that have that kind of attached port, but this one is just not attached. Okay, so all right, and here is a great example. These are a ton of determinatives. These are not 100%, but these do help, and I'll briefly just go over them. So you have a man, like an image of a man and an image of a woman. If you guys have ever seen me do my names in hieroglyphs, you always end a name with a man or a woman, which tells you that this is a man's name or this is a woman's name. When you put the man and the woman together, they mean people. That's actually what I do for anybody that wants to buy Enigma Hieroglyphs and they want a gender, they have a gender neutral, or they identify as non-binary. That is my suggestions. I usually put the image of both a man and a woman and 3 little lines, which is the word for people in general. Yes, usually verbs. Here's the fun thing, Leonardo. Ancient Egyptian words can be verbs, can be nouns, can be adverbs, all at the same time if they want it to be. So it's hard to say that something is a verb because it also can be a noun if you just change it slightly. So yes, it usually has to do with verbs of motion, but it also might mean like not, it might not be a verb. It's just kind of hard to say. This is like so complicated because you want to find that bridging point between our language, the language that most people are going to understand, and how you are teaching it, and you want to compare those languages, and it's really hard for this language. You really cannot compare it to anything. And so you'll see when we go over like verbs and like sentence structure that you'll see this is like one of the only languages where you don't have to conjugate a lot of things. Like you have to do some of it, but like in comparison to like a lot of the romance languages, like you don't have to conjugate anything. Yes, they like, it's as we know them. Yes, there are things that are nouns, there are verbs, there are adjectives, there are adverbs, but they really aren't the same because so many things can be all 4 at once or all 2 at once or anything like that. So yeah, so it's verb like. It's kind of the best way that you can kind of format it. But we'll go over that a little bit in a little later. So you also have determinatives that are a picture of an old man. You have a picture of a child. You have an official, an exalted person, so a dead person. So it's this person sitting in a chair. You have the thing for king and god. And then you have these kind of vaguer ones. So I don't think the legs are on this page, but you have like, there's the little man and he's bringing something up to his mouth. That can be used for words having to do with eating, drinking, speaking, thinking, feeling, like a lot of very wide range of words. That's a very, very common determinative. Anything that's like force or effort or like sometimes battle. This is this guy like wielding a stick. There's an enemy one. It's this dead guy and it looks like he's got like a pool of blood under his head. Yeah, action is definitely sometimes the way to go with this. Looks really weird, but this is hair. So it's usually for words that relating to hair, to mourning or forlorn. And that might seem weird, but it actually was common practice that women who would be hired as weepers would rip their hair out or rip their wig hair out. Thank you, DL Miller. Thank you for the hug. How are you doing today? Welcome to the live. We are talking about ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, and we are going over like kind of the basics of like the glyphs and forming words, and then we'll start forming sentences in a little bit as well. So what's another one? So there's trees, there's eyes for eye, seeing, actions of the eye. I am very, very tired. I went to an amusement park yesterday, so I'm in a little bit of an amusement park hangover. I didn't really celebrate the 4th of July, but it was like literally the only day that me and friends could come. So we could all go kind of together, but we saw a little bit of fireworks at the very end, but it was a long day. We were there for like 10 hours. Very obnoxiously, yeah. We were kind of lucky that like we were sort of leaving the amusement park like as they set them off, And there were people waiting, but we just sat in the parking lot for literally like 45 minutes because it took so long for everyone to get out. But yeah, I do like fireworks. I like to choose to go see fireworks. I don't like it to like randomly happen. I will say when we were walking out in the parking lot, somebody pulled up a Roman candle and just started. I was like, I'm sorry, what? Put that away. Absolutely. What are some other determinatives that are important? Oh, this one at the bottom is very important. It's a little crossroads. It looks like a cross like this, but it's in a circle. That is the symbol for town, village, or even for Egypt in general. But if you see that determinative at the very end, it tells you that it's the name of a town or name of a city, which is really, really important. And so that's like one of the really cool ones that even if you can't read the word and you see that symbol, you would know that they're talking about it like a specific city. I agree, D.L. Miller. I agree. Yeah, any sort of water and liquids, you use the little squiggly lines that look like water. And then the little dots, they're fully like really big dots. Anything that's like sand or minerals or pellets, anything very small in little pieces like that, you kind of can use that as a determinative to help you figure it out. But yeah, these are a couple of the different kind of determinatives that you see. And a lot of things... Chrome is messing up? Are you seeing... In what way? Are you just on Google Chrome? Are you on... Sorry, I heard a noise. Oh, okay. There we go. Alrighty. So, how do we actually form words? How are these words in ancient Egyptian actually formed together? So, I mentioned that there were 3 different phonograms, which are these glyphs that make a particular sound, but don't really have anything to do with what that word is defining. And these, they write the sound, but not the idea for the glyph. And this is mainly how you form words and sentences for ancient Egyptian language. This is also where the quote-unquote alphabet comes in, and we'll talk about why that is not the proper word to use. Yeah. So, the first one we have is called a monoliteral. A monoliteral makes one sound. Mono meaning one, and you'll see the pattern as we keep going. So the monoliterals are there's a very small selection as you see here. The monoliterals are what people on the internet who are not actually educated in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, what they will call the alphabet. So if you just Google ancient Egyptian alphabet, or if you have like a kid's activity book about ancient Egypt that you want to write your name in hieroglyphs, this is what you're going to see, but it does look a little different. And that is because there are not full 25 letters of the alphabet, of the modern alphabet, in ancient Egyptian. There are some significant letters that are missing. The big ones are O, and L is another really big one. Like X, there's no X, there is sort of a Y, but it's not really totally pronounced like a Y. A, B, C, D. There's not even a C technically. Yeah. I'm trying to think of. There's not really an E. There's only really kind of 2 main vowels. There are 2 A sounds, which is going to be here with the vulture. We call this an aleph, because it looks like a 3, but it's sort of 2 little sections, but you can kind of write it as a 3. And then this one, which is this little tiny C, but it's like kind of up high, sort of like a exponent, that is called an ayin. So an aleph and an ayin both make an A sound. They're slightly different, but they are mostly kind of pronounced the same. And then you have the E. Actually, you have three sort of vowels. You have the E, which makes kind of an E sound. even though it's written as I or written as J. And then you have the oo, which is written as a W, but it's a U. It's a U-ish sound. These are the only 3 vowels we have. And as you guys can probably presume, if you don't have vowels in between everything, you cannot say a lot of words. Like, you can't say words with only consonants. The whole kind of point of vowels are this breakup of the consonants. And so this is where it gets kind of very difficult, is that technically, Cassidy, if you want to, I would technically say oo would be oo, so w.w, because w also is the plural version, so you're literally saying it plurally. But yeah, it's kind of 3 quail chicks. So when you look up those alphabets, you are going to see letters that don't actually exist in Middle Egyptian. There is some instances where in later dialects of ancient Egyptian, some letters do pop up. But again, I only know Middle Egyptian, so I only know that. I think L does come up later, probably in late Egyptian, because I feel like I've seen it in more Greco-Roman languages, or the dialect that happened during the Greco-Roman period in Egypt, and it's a little lion, but that did not exist in Middle Egyptian, so I only go off of what Middle Egyptian had. Any questions so far for anyone else who's popped in? This is also the order that you will see these in. And it doesn't follow our normal alphabet, but this is how all dictionaries are going to be organized. It goes Ayin, I, Y, Aleph, I, Y, Ayin, W, B, P, F, M, N, R, and then you'll see there are multiples of certain letters after this. So there is first H, which is just written like an H. You have second H, which is an H with a little dot underneath it. Then you have third H. I was wrong before. I meant third H, not fourth H. Third H is H with a little smiley face underneath the bottom. And fourth H is an H with a line under the bottom. The first 2 are pronounced more like an H. The second 2 are more like a German ich. Ich. Kind of. Like a CH almost. Then you have two versions of S. One is S and one is Z. Then you have S with a little caret on top. That is sh. Sh. You have Q. You have K. Sometimes Q is written as first K and K is written as second K, but it should be Q and K. Then you have G. You have first T and second T with a line underneath it. And then you have first D and second D with a line under it. Heard that Egyptian symbols were more short syllables than... Yes. Well, no. Okay. Okay. You're close, Cassidy. So what I'm showing here that there are... Oh God. I just lost my place in... Sorry. Give me 2 seconds. So... you form the words by these 3 phonograms. No. The words are formed by these 3 phonograms. So these are 3 different types of glyphs that make 1 sound, 2 sounds, and 3 sounds. And some words just need that one glyph that has 3 sounds. Some just need that one glyph that has 1 sound. But some words are formed by multiple glyphs putting them together to form a word. So these again are the monoliterals. So these are the symbols that make just 1 sound. These are a small, these might be all of them, this might be most of them. These are the biliterals that make 2 sounds. So like this image of the little Senate board is men. You have the word for, so some of these are just, can be one word, but can also be combined with monoliterals or triliterals to make a larger word. For example, mu is the word for water, and it has the 3 different water signs, but you can also see it in combination words as well. So it's more important that you know what each glyph says phonetically than what words each glyph appears in, because they appear in so many words. It's better to know what sounds they make than what words they make, because then you can look up the word if you don't recognize it. We do have an ad coming up in about a minute, so we'll look at some of these ones. And the other thing about it is some glyphs have multiple sounds, and some glyphs you'll almost always see them as a determinative, which makes no sound, and then you'll realize, oh wait, it actually has one really rare phonetic sound in certain words. But mu, for example, like the three lines, that can be used as a determinative like all the time almost. Oh, the ZN. I'm actually going to look up what that symbol is. I think it's a pelt with an oar. I don't know about that one. That's a weird one. It might be a water skin. Oh, 33. Oh, that's the human body. Ew. What is that then? It is 2 arms engaged in rowing. So they're 2 human arms attached to a very small portion of a torso rowing. That is what that is. I've always wondered what that is. The one next to it is like a headless goat or cow, maybe. Corn nuts. So yes, so you're right, Paranoid. A lot of things are the vast majority of art is depicted from the side in profile view, although it's a combination of profile and frontal view. But you're right, the face is usually not seen frontally, but that glyph hair is seen frontally almost all the time. And there are some exceptions, like the god Bes and the goddess Hathor are the 2 huge exceptions where Bes is almost always depicted frontally. He has a profile view that sometimes is popular. It's him like hitting sort of a tambourine-ish instrument, but he is more often than not depicted frontally. And then the goddess Hathor is depicted normally in this kind of combination profile view, but on Hathoric columns you see her full frontal face as the top of the column. So yeah, so in this case, it's just a glyph. It is a part of a human body. It's just talking about just the head. And so for the concept of the glyph, you don't need it to be in profile. Although if you'll notice, every other glyph is in profile. It's really one of the only exceptions to looking at something like fully frontally. Okay, so these are all these biliterals. They make the 2 sounds. I also forgot to write this into my lecture, but I want to explain this so that you guys can say it when I'm saying stuff. So, okay, Met. That's a good example. So this is actually pronounced, well, let me look at that for a second. So that is a vulture. And usually that is pronounced moot. Oh, here we go. Okay, so that is a great point. So the vulture is usually you usually say it as Mut, because there's a goddess Mut who is a vulture goddess, And so I looked at that and I said, why is that met and not moot? Why is that not a triliteral? In Gardner's sign book, if you guys want to look this up, this is G14, and it is used, the actual word for vulture is nert, and that is used as a determinative for obvious reasons. It's telling you that this is the word for vulture. But it also says phonetic met for things like Achmet, which is riverbank, and meten, which is road. And so it's used as this biliteral that is in combination with certain things. But it says, for obscure reason, in this thing, which is a vulture, a little bread loaf, and then a woman, it says moot for mother. It is also the word for mother. So that's a super interesting. I didn't realize that it actually is a term. It is a biliteral, but it's not a triliteral for moot. It is a biliteral for met. I wonder why that is. I wonder if that has to do with maybe like a female, or no, that would be a plural determinative, or a plural ending. So the one thing I'll explain, because I wanted to make sure that we get this, is that we don't know how ancient Egyptian truly was spoken. We just don't know. We can use Coptic to guess as well as we can. We can study it, but we don't know how it was spoken, because there are obviously some sort of unspoken rules about how to pronounce things. And the big thing is that because we don't have as many vowels, how did they possibly speak this when there are full things like here, nem, nm. Even that, I said nem, that is using a vowel, that's submitting a vowel in between the two. You can't mr, you can't, it's really hard to say it without inserting a vowel in the middle of it. So when Egyptologists developed and discovered kind of the way that they think our grammar works for ancient Egyptian, they also had to come up with a way that scholars can actually talk to each other about this, and potentially talk to each other by saying, not by actually speaking the language to each other, but by physically saying the line out. Like saying, Hetepti Nisu Weser Abiju. Like, how can we actually say that so people understand? And one of the things that they kind of decided on as a rule is that whenever there are two consonants next to each other, you are going to insert the sound of an E in between. So when I look at the MN, I'm going to say men. When I look at the MT, I'm going to say met. When I'm going to look at the NW, I'm going to say new. Technically, the W is sort of a U sound, but you can still say new with an E sort of sound in the middle. Kem, kep, gem, guess, tem, dead, or, well, the capital D is actually pronounced DJ. It almost has a J, so that would be jed. So like all of these things, you add an E sound. So whenever you guys hear me speaking the ancient Egyptian language, this is sort of a guess with how we can just physically speak it as a learning tool, not as we are actually speaking ancient Egyptian. I hope that makes sense. All right, so then you have the triliterals. So we've already gone through the biliterals, the monoliterals, and now we have the triliterals. So these make three sounds together. The best example is going to be Ankh, which is right up here at the top. It's Ayin, N, third H. Ankh makes three sounds. Weben, Menu, Harry, Hetem, Heper. If you've ever heard of the god Khepri, Heper is literally his name. Jesser. I don't think Ptah is one of... I think that's just PT. Weser, like the Weser staff. Yeah, so there's lots of different ways, like this is how these triliterals kind of work, and like all of these different phonetic soundings, and all of these can be their own words, but they can also be combined with other things. More often than not, words like, I'm trying to think of like the longest word I've ever heard, and they don't have a lot of sounds. I would say 5 or 6 is probably the end. I don't think they go up that high. I'm trying to think. I don't think they do. I know like maybe a 4 or 5, so they don't combine often, but they will combine. So, how do we write these hieroglyphs, and which way do you write these hieroglyphs? Hieroglyphs can be written from left to right, from right to left, and from, yes, that is Hatshepsut in the middle. I was just picking pictures off the Google. So yes, you can read them from left to right, from right to left, or from up to down. You cannot read them down to up. When you are looking at them in the vertical columns, you also still have to figure out whether or not it is going from right to left or left to right. But you read them sort of as you snake down. You go back and forth or back and forth. So this one I liked as a good example because it's actually going both directions. So the way that you figure out which way it is written horizontally is you read into the faces of the actual animals and humans. So my best guess is whenever you come up to a piece of art and you don't know what it is, look for the animal. So in this case, I see this falcon, and I know that I'm going to read into the face of this falcon. And then you see, oh, wait a second, there's a falcon over here too, but he's facing the other way. Then that means on this side, I'm going to read into the face of the falcon. In some cases, because you see this pattern, it probably also means that this ankh is read on both sides. So in this case, I don't know exactly what this thing says. It probably says living Horus, or living God, or living son of Ra. This is what that one says, son of Ra. But you read the ankh on both sides. So yes and no. So obviously you can see here that the cartouches have been scraped out. If I remember correctly, so that's just for this particular example. I think this does have to do with Hatshepsut. I think, actually, I can look it up. Where's my name in the book that comes the most handy? My names of the kings of Egypt. So we go to Dynasty 18. Okay, this is what I thought. So, what you will see here is two cartouches, and then on the other side are 2 parts that have been scraped away. Where these were scraped away were the cartouches of Hatshepsut. But these cartouches on this side are the cartouches of her nephew/stepson, who she was supposed to be co-ruling with, or as a regent. Hi, Nat. How are you, hun? These are the cartouches of Thutmose III. So in the middle here, you have Men-Heper-Ra, and then you have Jehudi-Mes, which is Thutmose. Thutmose is a Greek or Hellenized version of Jehudi-Mes. So this one is his prenomen, and this is, I always get them mixed up, prenomen or nomen. This is his personal name, this is his throne name. And over here you would have probably had, Ma'at-Ka-Re is Hatshepsut's throne name, and then you would have had Hatshepsut here at the bottom, but they've been scraped away. But you are correct, is that both of these are duplicates, except for what you can see here. This is the same, but this over here is different. Oh, are you spelling? Oh, correct order. I see it. I see you're writing it backwards. That's funny. I don't know why I can read backwards pretty well. That's kind of a funny thing for me. So yeah, you guys pointed out a really good thing is that this piece goes both ways. You both read one section from left to right, you read another section from right to left, and they are mirroring each other with some distinct differences. And this one, in this case, you are actually reading it up to down, but you are technically reading it from right to left as you go down. So pop quiz. I'm going to show you 3 different images. You guys tell me, is it right to left? Is it left to right? And if it is vertical, which way is it? And which way is it, right to left or left to right? So, which way do we read this one, my friends? 10 seconds. No, not 10 seconds. Which way do we read these hieroglyphs? As I chug on my soda. Right to left. Very good, my friends. Yes, Big Panda. Although I will say there's a new study that some images of Hatshepsut may not have been actually destroyed by Thutmose III, but he definitely did destroy some of her stuff. You're okay, Baha. This takes a second. All right, next one, guys. Which way do you read this one? And if you notice, this one actually looks similar to the other one. I didn't realize until now. Very good. This one is left to right. You read into the faces, but if you notice, these are the exact same cartouches. These are cartouches of Thutmose III. You have Menheper, Ra, Jehudi, Mes, Nefer, Heper. But it's a different section. Actually, that's hysterical. I don't know if that's the same. It doesn't look like the exact same carving, but it is almost the exact same carving. Because look, it's the bull and the arm and the owl. But this is painted, so this is obviously different, but it's almost literally the exact same thing. That's so funny. So yeah, very, very good. So this one is from left to right. And the last one, what about this one? Hi, Slater. Bang! Got away. I do have a video on that, Slater, if you are curious. It's on my YouTube now. Because I made one and then people went crazy. This might be a trick question. Good job, Baha. This one is split in the middle. So this, obviously you are going from up to down. Very good. But this one actually is split down the middle. So the 2 columns on the left, you read into the faces of the animals. So you read into it, you read from right to left. And the 2 columns on the left, you are reading from, no, did I say that wrong? I literally have to read this because I'm so bad at my lefts and my rights. From this one, you go into it from the right and the left as you go down. And from this one, you go into it from the left and then as you go down. But you do go column by column. So in this case, you would start here, go down this entire column, and then come back up to this column and then go down. And the same thing with this column, you go down and then you go down. And actually, because there's a cartouche here, let's just look up whose cartouche this is. That says, oh wait, that says Menkaure. Throne names are unfortunately hard because a lot of people have the same throne name. But Menkaure is, Tutankhamun? No, he's Neb Keperure. Who's Menkaure? It's so hard because a lot of them have the same... Oh, no, wait, wait. Keperkare. Oh, I have no idea who this person is. I'm not reading this one correctly. The nice part about this book is at the back they have all of the different glyphs that are used in every single cartouche, so then you can look it up via... So if I look up the beetle, the dung beetle, and I can see which names has a beetle in it, and that helps me determine... Helps me narrow it down to other people. If I can find the frickin' beetle in here. Bird parts. Oh, misc animals. 12, 2, 18, 3, and 6. 12, 2. I don't think this is Dynasty 12. No, this is not Tutmos the Third. Maybe this is what's 12-2? Oh, this is Senusret. It's 12-2. So this is Keperkare, or Senusret the First. So this is from the 12th dynasty, around 1939 to 1760 BCE. Or that's the whole dynasty. 1878 to 1843 BCE is Senusret the Second. Which is cool. And you can see the top portion of that cartouche, that's his personal name. So it says Wesser S. Yeah, it says Wesser sorry. Wesser SN. Wesser SN, I think is like how it is in Egyptian. We do not know, Slater. Scribes were really, really rare, so we don't really know left hand, right hand kind of stuff. They pretty much only train a select amount of people. All right, very good, guys. Very, very good. So the Egyptians mainly wrote in these kind of long registers, either obviously vertically or horizontally, and more often than not, they are drawing the actual lines in between the registers, which you guys have seen from all these. Sometimes they don't, but more often than not, they do. And the glyphs are usually written in sort of this ideal square. So there are certain glyphs that would fill up an entire square, i.e. things like the owl and the a person and a hawk. Like all of those things would fill up an ideal square. But then the square can also be separated into 4 different quadrants, and smaller glyphs can then be fit into these quadrants. So you can see here that like here is one quadrant. You have the little bread loaf, you have the house, if you guys notice that, and then you have a reed leaf fitting into that larger square. You have the star, you have another house. The house is 10. Some things can be larger. Like a house sometimes can fill up the top 2 quadrants of a square, but it really kind of just depends on the time period. Sometimes they will shrink the size of certain glyphs, but there are certain ones that will always be this tall. This one is a little bit harder. The snake for the second D, monoliteral, it's really long. It goes up and down, and you can fit certain glyphs underneath it. So that would be almost separated into 3 long quadrants, as you can see here. This is the word det, or jets, which means is it forever, or is it, I think it means either forever or dominion, something like that. It's a common word in like religious text and stuff. Yeah, lined paper wombat. Everything was very organized for the Egyptians. They really wanted it to look clean and nice. Which is really funny because you also have to imagine that all of the places that they're putting these monumental hieroglyphs, no one is actually gonna know how to read them. Like, truly, I think about this sometimes where it's like, it seems like it was an absolute waste of time with how much they spent making this look perfect when the vast majority of people could not read. Like, it's kind of wild. It definitely shows you that it was not meant for people to read. That it was meant for the gods to read. Very cool, Pate. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. What's the next thing? Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is something called transliteration. And transliteration is how we transcribe these glyphs. And so it's essentially writing it in their phonetic way. And it's as a way that we can, again, learn the language and also kind of help us decipher and move away from all the determinatives and get kind of bogged down by that. So this, again, is those monoliterals. It's all of those words that only make one sound. And you can see you have the glyph here. You have how we write it, this transliteration. So you can see the 3 and then the little ion, the little C at the top, and all the different like dots and lines underneath it. But then you can also see what it is in English, sort of. So when you go through and you are translating these, you have to write the transliteration at the bottom. That was like, our professor like required us, you couldn't just write the translation, you had to write the transliteration. Because more often than not, if you're making a mistake, it's because you're transliterating it wrong. You are finding the wrong words, you're not combining words together. And you'll see when you're looking at this example, you'll see all the gaps as you go down, and you'll be like, oh, wow, this whole thing. Oh, this is from the book of Ani. This whole thing is the word for Ani, and it's like, yes, and you don't have to write any of the other letters. They're all determinatives. They don't make a sound. And so this is kind of how you see all of these monoliterals, biliterals, and triliterals combining together to make these words. Did they keep it that way? No, Slater, it really was that it was just only elite people had to know how to read. And not even elite people, it's just scribes was a special job. And it was a way that you, like, the kind of joke is that human language began when taxation had to be, when taxation was invented, which is semi kind of true. But no, so people were able to speak ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, but they were, in some estimates, during certain time periods of ancient Egypt, only about 5% of people were literate, so could read or write hieroglyphs. There's a chance people could read it more than they could actually write it. Only people of the scribal profession really knew how to read and write. We don't even know much about if the royalty were actually even trained in any of these things, because they had access to very good scribes who would do this. And so, yeah, agriculture keep track of food storage. Yes, some of the earliest glyphs that we have in ancient Egypt are tags on ancient Egyptian pottery that would have been full of like wine and other goods that were left in pre-dynastic royal burials. And they had these little tags made out of ivory, and they had hieroglyphs on it, and it probably says the name of like an estate or the name of somebody who has donated this to the funeral of that or the funeral, or technically even the afterlife of that royal figure. And those are sort of the first hieroglyphs that we have evidence of kind of emerging. But it really, like, they had language, but they didn't need to read or write. Really, everything else was done orally, really, oral tradition, passing down by apprenticeship. Writing was not just a necessity. It was only really, but that tells you that when we do see writing, it's not meant for the public. Images are made for the public, but the writing is like most likely made for the gods. But very, very good question. Okay. So there are two special rules with how we transliterate something. And I'm going to actually switch to my tablet to show you guys. I have this very fancy tablet that I literally only use for hieroglyphic transcriptions. So let's say I'm going to draw you the word for God. Can you see me? So that is the word for God. You pronounce it and transliterate it as excuse you. Oh, am I clicking the button? Is that why? I haven't done this in Netcher. So this is the second T, so it's like a ch sound. Netcher, not netter. Netcher. Netcher is the word for God. If you wanted to make it plural, you would... What the heck? If you wanted to make it plural, in hieroglyphs, it would be written like this. And you would write it, transliterate it. Why do I think this pen is out of battery? I don't even know if I can change the battery. You would write it as Netcheru. The oo sound is a plural ending, and that tells you that there are more than one. And the little strokes here tell you that there are more than one thing. The rule that my professor gave us was that if there are endings that have to do with gender or number, you have to add a dot at the bottom when you are transliterating. Because potentially there might be a word a separate word that is Netcheru, that is not gods, because it is not the plural version of gods. So we want to make sure that we don't do that, and that you know that we are acknowledging this as plural. In another example, if you wanted to say my gods, if you wanted to add a possessive pronoun on it, you would probably write it in hieroglyphs as and this is where someone's gonna make fun of me for how I draw my little man, but it would be Netcher E. E is going to mean I or my. And so this would be literally, whoa, what happened? I don't know. Ah! Oh my god. Okay. What, I just want... Oh my god. What happened to the paintbrush? Okay, I cannot tell if there's something wrong with my computer or if it's my pen, but it keeps dying on me. I might have to like recalibrate this. But this would be my god. No. So this is the dots. Wait. For what word? Wombat? Number of dots after my mother for family members. No. No, because that would be a totally different word. And then if you also wanted to say, if you wanted to write my gods, you would have to write... Oh, I didn't explain this. Sorry. The equal sign shows possession. And it also is used in verb structure, which you're going to see in a second when we get to that. So yeah, so this is not a universal taught thing with Egyptologists, but the dots and the equal signs are used when you are only transliterating. It really has nothing to do, it doesn't really affect grammar or anything. It is just a way that you can show that you are acknowledging that this is a plural word, that this has a different gender at the end. In some cases, you'll have to add a T for female, you'll have to add an F for, or no, sorry. All words are generally masculine, so you add a T if it is a feminine word. Does that make sense? Because that's a little bit more complicated than we're getting into. I don't believe so, but honestly, I do not know. Because the big thing my professor told us was that, like, this is something that his professors taught him, but it's not what all Egyptologists teach their students. It's just the way that he was taught, and so I don't even know if all Egyptologists kind of do the same thing. Does this separate? I don't think it does. I'm trying to figure out if the battery is dead, but I don't know if this even has a battery. Okay. But yeah, I don't think this is a general... I wouldn't doubt it in other ancient languages, possibly, but I'm not 100% sure because I don't know how other ancient languages are transliterated. Okay. Grammar. This is gonna seem crazy, but it's a little simpler than you think, because I'm only giving you guys the basic stuff. So, the first rule is that rules are made to be broken in this language. It is never going to be the same, and there are going to be exceptions to the rule all the time. And you will unfortunately just learn on the job that there are exceptions to the rule. We still are going to have nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, like in English. But, as I mentioned before, many words can be used as multiple things. Can be both a noun, a verb, and an adjective. You just make it a little bit different. Nouns will have gender and number, and thus any sort of pronoun that is affecting it, that is possessing it, will carry over that same gender and number. The roots are always masculine, and then feminine endings end with a .t. Verbs don't mark for tenses. It's all context, 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 context. Which is the most annoying part about this, because every time you think that you know this predicate style is in a certain tense, something will happen and it'll change the whole thing. So they're not actually marked for tenses. And there's no conjugating, really. Like, there are certain small aspects where you might conjugate something, but more often than not, there is no conjugation. There's no, like, E2, did it, like, je m'appelle, tu m'appelles, like, there's nothing really like that with ancient Egyptian. The last one is all sentences are clauses, but not all clauses are sentences. There is no verb for to be. So there's no verb for is, which gets really difficult sometimes, but there are ways to use is. Like, is still used. It's just not a physical verb. And we'll see it when we look at different types of adverbial sentences, where you almost translate it almost all the time as is. It's just not normal. And there's no actual word there to sit in for is. Okay. The sentences that don't have any verbs, which are going to be our adverbial sentences. There's adjectival predicates, there's adverbial predicates, and then there's nominal predicates. We're only going to cover one of those today. The basic structure is you might have a particle in the front, which we'll talk about examples of particles, but that's why it's in parentheses. It is not required. And then you will have a subject and a predicate. The subject in this case can be a noun, a dependent pronoun, or a suffix pronoun. And then the predicate can be an adverb or adjectival prepositional phrase. And these are the more often ones that you will be translating as is. When you're looking at a full verbal sentence, you can start with the particle. Some of them require them, but most of them do not. Then you have the verb plus the subject, and that's all you really need, is the verb plus the subject. But then you might have an object, and then you might have an adverbial prepositional phrase at the end of that. The particle helps begin a sentence, and there's only really a few predicates that require them. Most of the particles have a translation, and some of them don't. So let me briefly go back to, how do I just like clear the whole thing? So one, I gotta find the one. One of the particles that is used sometimes is this might not look like it, but it is supposed to be an owl. And that is a hand. And this is a basket with a loop. So this is mech. Which usually gets translated as look. Like it's like this kind of beginning of a sentence saying look, and then it says the sentence. And that is a type of particle that you can have at the front. There's also one whenever you're doing a negative sentence, so whenever you want to say not, you have to do, how do I draw this again? That is an upside down hands, and then the water symbol, and this is nen. And this is a negative. So yeah, it's very much like a hear ye, hear ye. That's exactly what that is. And then nen essentially is any sort of negative. What the fudge cakes? So anytime that you are not doing something, this gets put at the very, very front of your sentence. And it's just always like an indication. It's like, oh, this is a negative. We're not doing this sentence. And so you wouldn't write it at the very beginning like you would for look. You would write it within the sentence. You would say, I am not listening, even though not is at the very, very beginning. And then the most common one that you will see... is EU. Now, EU is a particle that appears at the beginning of certain types of sentences, but it has no phonetic sound. This symbol is the only one of the only indications of the beginning of a sentence, which is outrageous and crazy, but it literally is like, this tells you a sentence is beginning, everyone get ready. And so you can find out, like, if you seek these out when you're reading, you can find out, oh, you can put a little slash before the symbol and you can say a sentence is beginning, but there is no phonetic like component to it. And I'm trying to figure out, I gotta remember which ones. I think it always... I think it's always used in the imperfective, but I gotta remember that. Okay, EU mostly starts an independent main sentence. Yeah, that's what it is. I do like your little owls. So yeah. I mean, yeah, that is true. I could make easy emotes. Very true. All right, so for the verbal sentences, the object and adverb or adverbial predicate is optional. It's not a requirement for a sentence. More often than not, it will have it, but it's not a requirement for a sentence to be full. You really only need that subject and verb, and the verb will always come before the subject, more often than not. Sometimes you will see the subject, but that's only not for the examples that I'm going to show you. The subject in this case can be a noun or a pronoun. If a suffix follows the verb, then it is the subject. But if a suffix follows a noun, it indicates possession of that noun. So that's the key difference between the two of them. Some quick stuff about adjectives and pronouns. So adjectives are always after the noun that it describes. It will describe the same gender and number as the noun describes. So even if the adjective doesn't typically have a plural or a female ending, if the word it describes does, then you will add those to it. And there really is only one true adjective, which sounds weird to say, but there is only one. It is neb, which is literally just a basket. And neb means all, every, any, like kind of this like all-encompassing thing. It is the only time that word only is used as an adjective. Other words that are adjectives can be used as nouns or as verbs. It is the only one that is only used as an adjective. Anything that is a noun or anything that is an adjective, let's say beautiful, nefer. That's okay, Cassidy. Like the nefer, which means beautiful or good. It is an adjective meaning beautiful, but it also can mean the beautiful one as a noun. And so it's like adjectives and nouns are often the same thing. It just depends on how you translate them to get them to that point. Then you have the pronouns, which are relatively simple. They are very similar to how words are gendered or singular and plural. For pronominal possession, you use suffix pronouns. So you have e, which is for me or my. You have k for you or your. You have s for she or her. You have f for him or his. You have n for we or all, our. You have chen for you plural or your plural. And then you have sen for their, or they or their. So you have all of those options for your pronouns, for your suffix pronouns, so that you can add them if you don't want to actually say the noun. Hello, hello, welcome on in. We are doing a lesson on ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. So this is also where you can see the equal sign will help you figure out possession. But because it will become more confusing because the equal sign is used for lots of different reasons. It can be also used for verbs and connecting the subject to the verb as well. So it gets a little confusing, which is why context is the most important thing you have to remember. You have to look at everything kind of together. You can't just read the dictionary and say, well, this is what that sentence says, because it's just not how that works. All right, we're finally getting to our first sentences. So the first type of predicate that I'm going to teach you guys about is the adverbial predicate. So this is a relatively simple one. It doesn't involve any verbs or conjugating verbs or anything. It's just verbs, or it's just adverbs. Okay. The structure of the syntax is a possible particle, the subject, and the predicate. Usually in these types of sentences are more simple, and you might be able to use the English verb to be when translating, but not always. In this sentence, the main clause is describing the subject in some way. And if there is a secondary clause attached to it, it will usually be describing something that is happening simultaneously to the main clause. And these two clauses can then be connected by words that unfortunately are not actually written in the hieroglyphs, but have to be added to with context. So if you find that there are these two clauses that are attached to each other, for an adverbial predicate, you would do blah, blah, blah happened when, while, as, or being in, blah, blah, blah happened. So I'm gonna write one for you guys to see. So give me, honestly, 2 seconds, because it's gonna take me a little bit to, how did I do that last time? Oh, I did. Select all, delete, and then brush. All right, let me find one that I will write down. Okay, I'm gonna write this one down. Try to write these as fast as possible, but it's not gonna work. Also, this is gonna be the most sloppy you're ever gonna see. Also, looking back at this page that I'm looking at, oh god, that was bad. It's hysterical because it's like the first hieroglyphs I ever wrote, and they're all so bad. They're all like really, really bad. Okay. So there's our sentence. Thank you, Big Panda, for lurking. So this is our sentence. It's hard to kind of figure out what we're looking at, so we're going to highlight the different words. So this is that particle that we saw before. And then this is actually a word. This is a word by itself, and then this is a word. So what we have here is mech. You might be able to tell what this one is, because this, although it looks like a woman, I put the little beard there. This is Ra. This is a monoliteral for M. And then this is actually made out of just 2 monoliterals with 1 determinative for pet. So, I can tell you guys what all of these words mean. This is how I normally would actually write it. I transliterate it, and then I write the definitions really small. So this says, look. This is for Ra. M means in, and pet is the word for the sky. I know, I've always loved that one. It looks like a face. So what it actually is this is a bread loaf. This is a, like, it's like a wooden block or something. And then this is actually the goddess Newt, who is stepping over the world as the sky. So she is literally like hands over here, head over here, body over here, legs over here. That's like literally how her body is. And so the glyph is literally that same motion, but it's kind of like that. So it literally is her as the sky. So you would translate this as, the look is kind of by itself, sort of as like a sentence. It literally means Ra is in... Oh God, why? The sky. Very simple. This is probably like one of the simplest ones that we can pick because it's just the literal, like the subject is Ra and the predicate is in sky. Ra is in the sky. It also technically means, it also can technically just mean the sun. Ra is the word for a lot of different things, but it's probably means the actual god, but it could be both. So there's that one. Let me see if I can find another one. I'm gonna save that one for later. All right, let's do this one. Also, there's an ad, so I'm gonna write it through the ad, and then we'll cover it in a second. What's wrong with my board? But it keeps like stopping. Like that. I also drew all of my owls with smiley faces. This is like my first week of hieroglyphs is on all this paper that I'm reading. This one to write. There we go. I'm gonna calibrate this maybe or something. I don't think I've used this with my new computer, so I think that probably might be it. Okay, I think we're gonna have an ad in a second, so. Thank you. It's only because I'm actually writing it with a pen. I'm pretty good with it with a mouse, but the pen usually is really nice, but I don't think it's calibrated. I think that might be what's going on. Or it's, I'm gonna actually just unplug it. Okay. So this is the sentence. I should not have closed the book. Yes. Much more artistic. That's why I kind of call them monumental, because it's meant to be on monuments rather than on like kind of the daily papyrus and ostraca and stuff like that. Hello, Maxie. How are you? Welcome on in. We're doing a lecture today. So here is our sentence. We'll change the font to red again, and we'll separate the words. So this one you might recognize. This is that particle. Then we have, this is one word. This is one word. This is one word. This is one word, and that's one word. Yeah. So when we transliterate this, we get EU, which is that particle. Sometimes my professor would put parentheses around it because you don't actually say it, even when, like, that's the craziest part about this, is you don't actually even say the particle. Like, it's this silent particle that tells you when the sentence begins. This is looks crazy, but it's actually just key. Then you have M, pair, and then you have, which H is this? Second H, hen, ah, and then set. So, what we now know is that this is for a new sentence, but you don't say anything. Key means another. M is in, as we said before. This is house. We talked about that before. Henna is with. Ooh, with. And then set is the word for woman. Very cool. I will not be in my neck of the woods next week. I go on vacation next week. Well, welcome on in. So, when you look at this sentence, because I'm just going to leave this out there, can anybody guess what this sentence says? Because remember, we're talking adverbial phrases. There's no verbs, and you can often use is in the sentence. Can anyone give me the translation for it, now that I've given you all the definitions for the words? I'm curious if any of you guys can pick this up. Anyone gonna try? I'm giving you a couple more seconds to think about it.
Computers now have primary control of critical vehicle functions.
5 more seconds. Anyone want to guess? Even simpler than that, paranoid. You're getting too bogged down into English. It's getting even simpler. You're close. I will say what you said is like a really like, I'm trying to think, like you did a very embellished version of what this sentence says, but it's even simpler. No, it's not that. So literally, this sentence just means, very close, Baha. Another is in the house with a woman. It sounds weird, but that is what it is. It's very, very simple. So technically, what you could also say is this is what the basic thing is, and then sometimes you can kind of go and embellish and you can add with context. To make it sound a little bit better, you could say someone else is in the house with a woman. But it's just another. There's another person. But it's very simple. You guys got the very gist of it. And like, paranoid, what you kind of said is like, you super embellished it. She was not alone in the house. Like, yes. But this is the very, very basics, is another is in the house with a woman. I haven't read it yet because I've been really busy with stuff, but I have to sit down next week and do a whole thing about all the news. There's been like 4 or 5 news things that have come out, so I have to sit down and read them so that I can make some TikToks about them. But I did see that news. Okay, I think that's all we're going to do for this one, but we'll have some more sentences for people to practice on later. But we're going to switch back over to our presentation to go to our subject, our full sentences with verbs and all that. So, I forgot my notes. Where's my notes? Yeah, it's very like, it can be clunky. Like, you are saying kind of a lot of extra words, but that's like the most accurate way to say it, because again, we just don't know how much they would embellish and how much they would exaggerate or summarize in these sentences. So, the first verbal predicate we're going to learn today is called the sejamef. A quick understanding of what the sejamef is. The sejam is the word for to hear or hearing, sejam, and is him or his. And so sejamef literally means he is hearing. Wait, I'm gonna say that. I'm gonna correct myself I'm gonna make sure I'm right before I say that. I just know. Yes, he is hearing. Yeah. So, for some reason, whoever developed, or not even developed, whoever discovered these verb tenses always uses sejamef as their example. So that is like the one word that you just like will know off the top of your head is sejam. And so a sejamef is the word for the imperfective. The imperfective is a particular verbal predicate where you have the predicate plus the subject. You can have the article in the beginning. You can have an object or an adverbial adjunct. Like, you can have extra stuff. As I mentioned, all of these are tenseless. But for the imperfective, for the most part, your sentence is going to be talking about an ongoing action or an incomplete action. This will usually present itself as a present tense, as in he hears, but it's not all, like, we can't say that it is a present tense, a present tense verb. I don't really know why, but we just can't, which is the unfortunate part. The predicate in this case is the conjugated verb. That is, and then the subject is usually a noun or a suffix pronoun. And then at the end, if there is that adverbial adjunct or that adverbial clause, it will be talking about something that is going on simultaneously to what the main clause is saying. And so usually the way that you would translate that is the man hears. I'm trying to think of an example. Well, I'll show you guys the examples now. So let's pull up so let's look at, let me find an example that is I'm trying to find an example. Oh, because. Because is an example. Okay, that's a good example for the next one, but I need an example for this one. Ah! I marked some of these, but... Okay, yeah, here we go. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna be able to write these faster now. One of my favorite glyphs of all time. Is this. And I'll explain what it is in a second. It looks silly, but it makes sense once you know what it is. That was the worst. Okay. There we go. All right, so in this case, you have a word here. That is the particle, as we've said before. This is a word. This is a word. This is a word. The single glyph is a word. This is a word that we just looked at, and this is another word. So what you have is EU. This is the second D and then the first D on top of it. That is a very common way you say that jed, instead of dead. If you flipped it the other way, it would be dej. This is first S and then second S, so sesh, not shesh, sesh. Then we have PN, N, ST, and TN. So what you have is you have new sentence. This means to speak. So this is our verb. This is the word for scribe. Then pen is the word this. N is to. These small words like the N and the M can mean multiple things, but to is the most common. And then if you remember correctly, this was woman. And 10 is also this, but you'll notice that this is a feminine marker. So if you're saying this about something that's feminine, it is 10. If you are saying this about something that's masculine, you say pen. It's the same thing. It's just different for male and female. So you need to then find essentially the sejm F. The F is going to be the subject and the sejm is going to be the verb. So what do we find here? Technically what you would do is there'd be an equal sign here. And the other part is that these two things are related to each other. And and these two things are related to each other. So I can try, I'll do this one and we'll find another one. But what this says is, the other thing is that these can also mean that, just depending on who you're talking about. So in this case, it is that scribe spoke to that woman. Boop. Very simple. And it is sort of in that present tense, but not really. It's kind of weird about it. It could also technically be this scribe spoke to this woman. But remember, this is ongoing action or incomplete action. So that's the key thing, is that it's not necessarily the present. It is an ongoing action. So the difference between this and that doesn't seem like a lot, but this could literally mean the thing that is currently going on in front of you, rather than that one might be describing something in the past. So sometimes you have to change it based on that as well. Any questions so far? This gets more and more complicated the deeper we go. But I wanted to show you guys some verbal predicates because they are kind of cool. Alright, let me see if I can find one more. Let's do... Ha ha ha! You don't. The best thing is that the subject should be immediately next to the verb. That's the key thing, is that the order is always going to be... Whoa. Verb, subject, then object. So you do have to, again, go off of context and go off the words that you are seeing, but you can always assume that the word that is coming immediately after the verb is going to be the subject. There are, unfortunately, some where the subject jumps up to the front, and that's a stupid thing that sometimes happens. But for the most part, they're going to be right next to each other. I love how you changed it, though, to how do you know? Like, it's more like, do you know? Do you know which one is which? Select all, delete. Okay, let's do this one. Oh, actually, let's do... Yeah, let's do this one. This is an interesting sentence. It's a little bit more convoluted, which I think is cool. I kind of hate drawing quail chicks. There's those little legs. And I hate this thing. I think that's supposed to be a bladder of some kind, but I can't remember. No, they never do. They never, ever do. That's supposed to be a hand, but the worst part is this, which I'm not going to be able to do justice. This is a baby or a child. I'm gonna run out of room. Okay. Do you know? No. So, we have sentence number 1, or word number 1, word number 2, word number 3, word number 4, word number 5, word number 6, and word number 7. So this is the thing that's so hard to figure out is honestly, where does one word begin and one word end? And truly, it is just something that you start to notice and you start to learn. Like, you start to learn, well, this is usually a determinative, and this is either a determinative or a suffix pronoun. And anything with a line is usually a determinative. And so it's sort of like, if you can get that down, then you can sort of see where some words end. That's a very good question. I would say Ma'at is weird. I don't think Ma'at is technically a bird. Ma'at is either a feather or Ma'at is a winged woman. That's a very good question. I don't think Ma'at is a bird. Ma'at is a feather. I don't know what specific type of feather. I would say she is closer to a kite, which is the type of bird that both Nephthys and Isis are associated with. It's literally spelled like the flying thing, a kite. It's a specific type of kind of hawkish bird. Paranoid, yes, you remembered what I said. Close, but we'll talk about it. None, Leonardo. The only part that is still a portion of ancient Egyptian language is only in Coptic, which is a Christian language for the Coptic Church. Everything else that is in Egypt is Arabic. Egyptian Arabic is different than other Arabic languages, but it is fully Arabic. It has really nothing to do with ancient Egyptian language, because it was brought in during the Islamic invasion of Egypt. So you're getting what I'm putting down. So we got the EU. We have the R. This is R. Rui. Then this is fourth H. Herd. Then we have pair. Everyone remember what pair says? Then we got neb. Then we got men. Or M. Then we have... Newt. Yeah. So, what we have is new sentence. Sentence. This is the word for, this is a verb meaning to depart. And variety of things. Because remember, the little legs means that it's something in motion. The word haired is child. The word pair is house. Neb by itself with that little tick means lord or master. M is in, and Niyut means city. So it's not a name for a city, but it is the word for city. Just like I was telling you guys earlier. So depart also has lots of different words. It could also mean to escape, to leave. It has a couple different verbs for being that. So the equal sign goes there. So that means that is the subject. Would anyone like to try translating this one? And remember, we're kind of going in sort of present-ish tense. This one's a little hard because it skips over some small words, but I think you guys might be able to get this. And I'll give you the hint that it goes 1, 2. So you say this one first, then you say this one, and then you say this pretty much straight that way. I want to see if any of you guys can get it. Very close, Paranoid. Very, very close. And I like how you said, like, finally left. That's definitely a little bit of the embellishment, but I know my professor would definitely do stuff like that. But yeah, you pretty much almost got it head on the nose. So it is the child, the way I have it in my book, we actually use the word escape. I don't know if escape is the right one or if it is just leave, but we're going to keep with it. The child escapes. So yeah, actually, the one part you didn't get paranoid is that you put it in the past. You said left. It would be to leaves. So the child escapes. Make sure it's sort of that present tense. It's an ongoing action. Escapes. The master's house in the city. So it also technically obviously can be the house of the master. It can be either one, obviously. So when two nouns are next to each other and don't have anything in between them, that shows a direct genitival adjective. Oh my god, direct genitive adjectival clause. And so by having house and lord next to each other, you can put in of. So you can say the house of the master or the lord's or the master's house. Like you can literally kind of put those in together. So yeah, you very, very close got it, Paranoid. It was really just the tenses, and that it's not that they're leaving for the city, it's in the city, because we have the M over here. Oop, upside down. The M is in the city. Goes right towards that. But very good. Very good try. Okay. That tells you where the house is. That's pretty much all it's saying. It doesn't have to be included, but it's telling you that the house is in the city. It's just like any sort of descriptive extra part of it. It's just another, if you really did it, essentially this whole, oh god. The whole thing is that this whole section is describing the house. Even the Lord is describing the house. So technically, you could have just cut this off and it would say, the child escapes the house. The child leaves the house. But this is just all this extra stuff that's piling on to describe the house. This is a very good question. My professor was very adamant that he did not create new sentences for us. But with that caveat, this is coming from the textbook from Hawk, and I do believe he did sometimes create sentences on his own. Some of the ones might be real, but I do believe that one of the reasons my professor did not like the textbook that we learned from, like this is quite literally, whoop, my phone goes. This is quite literally the notebook that I used over 5 years ago to learn hieroglyphs. This is I think I'm on lesson 3. And then I have my second notebook here from my second year. So my professor usually, if we weren't working out from Hawk, everything was a real sentence from some sort of text somewhere, because if he looked at me now and what I do with creating names in hieroglyphs, he would be really mad at me. I can tell you that very, very honestly, because he is not one to shy away from being rude to you. He would be pretty mad that I create and sell these names in hieroglyphs, because I am creating like sentences out of thin air. I know he would kind of be mad at me, but I don't give a shit because I hated him. It's unfortunate that even though he taught me so much, like he was my advisor, and then ruined an already sour perception of him, but ruined it like even more. Okay, so the last thing that we're going to look at is called the perfective. It is very similar, but just a little bit different than the imperfective, obviously because of the name differences. So this is called the Segem NF, and you can see it has that .n next to it right here, Segem NF. And it is structured like almost identically, but you have the particle, the predicate, the .n, and then the subject. So this is where that it comes right in between the predicate, which is the verb, and the actual subject. It's one of the only times that you will see a separation between the subject and the predicate. Essentially, if the subject is a... Oh my god, hiccups. Where's my water? Okay. If the subject is a suffix pronoun and thus attaches to the verb via the equal sign, then the .n would actually go in between them. And like the other one, this is also tenseless, but the main clause will indicate a completed action. That is the difference between the two. One is an ongoing or incomplete action, and this is a completed action. This means it most likely is going to sound like past tense. And then if you add on an adverb clause at the end, it would be separated. It would be an action that is happening before, sorry, I was checking that it wasn't before or after, before the main clause. And thus, if you put these two clauses together, they would be separated by the word after, though there would not be an actual word for after. Yes, Elvis has left the building. Exactly. Very good. That would be a perfective sentence. So let's look at some of those sentences. Let me find some sentences. These are where they get a little bit harder. All right, let's do this one. I have to write a little bit smaller because it's long. Whoa, gotta rewrite that. Oh god, I also hate drawing the goose. I can't draw the goose anymore. That looked really silly. Okay. Also, my woman looks so bad. Oh god, that was even worse. Okay. Little horned viper. And my little person. My other Egyptologist friend Greg saw me write the little glyph for the person. He goes, "Why is it so complicated?" And I was like, "I don't know what to tell you, man. This is just how I did it, and I can't do it any other way." And we got the vulture too. You haven't seen that before. Oh, we got another vulture. Oh god, what is that? I think that's this. Not 100% sure. Oh my god, I got like 2 more words. I don't know if I can make it. Oh god, I forgot about this word. This glyph. Ah! Okay, there's one more glyph, but I can't fit it. I'll just put it underneath it. Okay. Yeah. No, very sure. Very true.
Control of critical vehicles.
Little person's outfit seems appropriate. He really only has like a little shirt, sort of. The lady, oh god, she looks so bad. She's like kind of sitting with her knees up, sort of. Okay. This is a longer sentence. Okay. So, we have... Oh my god. Melissa, get it together. 1 word. 2 words. Making sure. 3 words. 4 words. Oh, nope. Over there. 5 words. 6 words. 7 words. 8 words, and then this whole last thing is I can't do it. It's 1 word. So we have EU, Jeded, N, Sat, R, Eat, S, Ma'a, S, and then Bucket, hey, oh, hair, Okay, this one's a little bit more complicated, but I believe in us. So, what you do see here is this verb that we already saw before. So we got new sentence. This means to speak. And there's an N. This is the word for daughter. R is to. Eat. This is a really weird word. So if you see here, it's I for the reed leaf, the T for the bread loaf, and then there's an F. The F, for some reason, is completely silent in this. But sometimes you write it like this, which is so annoying and weird. This is the word for father. Ma is the word for to see. Baket is the word for female servant. Hair is on top of. And this is the word for donkey. Ooh, you can barely see it. Donkey. So, what we actually have here is 2 sentences, and you technically can write them as 2 sentences, but it's actually 1 whole sentence, just to be fun. What you see here is I've left the S on both of these blank. In this case, this is possession, and the S means her, so her father. But in this case, this is technically, I'm going to do a dotted line instead of a full line. This technically could be a whole new sentence. And you can translate them technically as such. And in this case, the S would be she and would be the subject. So technically you could write this as, and then if you guys notice, it's a Sejem F or Sejem NF. So you got the dot N and the equal sign. So technically this would be the daughter spoke, because it's a completed action, to her father. Yeah, pretty simple. And then the second one would say she, but then you notice, wait a second, there's no N. So what you would see, it's actually not. She sees the female servant on top of the donkey. But then when you read these back to back, like let's say we put a period here, it says the daughter spoke to the father. She sees the female servant on top of the donkey. That doesn't really make sense because they were switching tenses because these one is a Sejemenef, and one is a Sejemef. So you have to like look at that and you say that doesn't make any sense. And so what you realize is that these are actually combined together. And so what you actually are going to do is the daughter spoke to her father when she saw the female servant on top of the donkey. And it sounds confusing that you suddenly are switching it, but it depends on, that's why none of these things have tenses, is that things change based on the context that it's in. And because this is an adverbial sentence, it changes. So the daughter spoke to her father when she saw the female servant on top of the donkey, or upon. You can also say upon the donkey. Make sense? It's very, very incomplete. Yes, in this case, this is the N. Yeah, so N, the monoliteral for that says N is going to be the little one water sign, and that is shows that it is a Sejemenef. So the other thing our professor always made us do is write the tense at the bottom. So I would write Sejem and F, or I would write the perfective. And then I would write this as, this is technically just a Sejemef or an imperfective. Yeah. No. In some cases it could be. I'm trying to think of an example where it says, somebody says. I think there's I think you use a specific predicate when you want somebody to be actually speaking, rather than saying somebody spoke. I think there's either a different verb you use. I'm trying to think of an example. I know there's stuff in the Shipwreck Sailor. I'm trying to see. Trying to see where he starts talking to the giant snake. Yeah, this one is not as, it just kind of goes, he opened his mouth to me when I was on my belly in his presence, and then the next part is just already, like, direct quote. How joyous are the gods after you have perpetuated their offering loaves. Yeah, so it's, direct speech is a little bit harder to do most of the time. Trying to find another sentence for us, because otherwise it gets... Oh, we forgot about the perfect. Should I have taught you guys about the perfect? Or no, perfect is perfective. That's what it is. No, there's no clear indicators. No quotation marks, no punctuation, nothing. It's all context. It really is, unfortunately. Okay, let me see if I can find one more. let's do this one. Yes, the EU is a cool feature. It's just not used in every single type of sentence. That's the kind of problem. It's helpful. It's like one of the most helpful things ever. But then eventually you get to a point where there's certain predicates that don't need it and never have it. And so it's like impossible sometimes when you're just like, oh shit, I can't find anything that I want to see. All right, so let's do, which one should I do? These all have extra things that I haven't taught you guys yet, so I don't want to do it because I don't want to confuse. God, some of these sentences are so horrible. And you can tell that I just like don't know a lot about some of these sentences, and so I'm like, all right, I think I'm gonna go back to one of these sentences. At a certain point, I suddenly kind of learn how I'm supposed to format all of these, and so they look much nicer. And at a certain point, I started writing every single glyph out so that I learned how I could actually write them, even though most of my cohorts didn't do that. Let's do this one. Okay. Oh, I already started writing it wrong. I'm gonna use another verb that we keep seeing. I don't know why, it's a pretty common one that we see. There's so many birds, and they are so complicated to draw. Here's the placenta. That's another pretty common word I've drawn. Oh, this also looks like a bucket. It's actually might be a vagina. It's a fun theory that people have. This is a very weird cliff. But it's a man who's kind of putting his foot out. It's not a very common one. And here's the frontal face if you didn't notice it last time. And this one, which some people might recognize, but it kind of depends. Okay. And we'll probably end right after this unless you guys have any questions. So we got that one right there, which is sort of also attached to this, and then this is one, and then this is one, and then this is one, and this is one, and this is one, and That is one. This is technically one, but they're technically attached. And then this is one. I think I unfortunately will, TJ. I will be in denial forever because I have found that my imposter syndrome, even many years out of grad school, like won't go away, which is one reason why I'm called in denial. But I'm also, I always talk about ancient Egypt, so I'm in denial all the time. So we have EU, we have Jed, then we have an N, then we have an F, then we have an N, then we have an F, then we have an S, we have a T, we have an M. Which H is this? Het. Then we have a hem set. So this hem is a biliteral, or this glyph is a biliteral for hem, and then you have S and then T. You have hair, then you have ST, F, aha, T. So, new sentence. You have to speak. You have the N, dot N equals F. That is going to be he. You also have another NF. So this technically could be to and then he, which would actually be him. This word actually means after. The set we'll talk about in a second. Hem set, with that little man sitting, is the word for sitting or to sit. Hair is on top of or upon. Set, although this symbol looks very similar to the goddess Iset, who literally, her name is Iset. This is the word for throne. Hi, Zachy, welcome on in. And then this is also for he/him. And then ahat means great. So, this one is a little bit harder because it has one thing that I did not teach you guys yet, which is this. This is something called an infinitive. So it is a verb, but it is, and I'm going to read the definition of an infinitive so I don't say, it is a finite verb form. The verb has a subject and functions as a predicate. It refers to the action as such, and it can be used as a noun. So it literally can be used as to this or the ing at the very end. So in this case, what we have is the subject is going to be he. He said. The other thing is that he, him is also it. He said it is going to be our object. He said, oh, that's what it is. Come back. Set is the object. Yeah, I don't know why this goes like this. Set is the object. He said it to him. Technically, it could also be he said. Yeah, no, it can't be that. It can't be the opposite. After sitting, so it's this infinitive. It's a verb, but it's not in a full verbal predicate or even adverbial predicate. Actually, no, it is an adverbial predicate. He said it after sitting on his, forgot, he, him, his great throne. So the it in this case, the set, that's what I'm remembering now, is the set is specifically referring to something that happened in a previous sentence. It's not like an actual version of it. It is specifically referring to something that happened earlier in the text. I'm trying to think if I can find one more that would be fun. It is 11:25 though, and my eyes are starting to blind me. I really want to do that one, but that's so complicated. Let's see if we can find one. I think we'll do this one, and I think you guys will be able to get this one because it doesn't have any extra stuff. So be prepared to listen and figure it out because I think you guys are going to be able to get this one. I love this thing because it looks like a marshmallow. This is a little scroll of papyrus. And this is a really annoying, I shouldn't have done this one, but it's a really annoying thing too. It's like a flying, flapping bird. Or maybe it might be a baby bird, but like flapping like crazy. And then this is a complicated glyph too. There's all these dots on the side. And then another complicated glyph. Stick. Do do do. Do do do. I love how I keep picking ones that has the word for house in it. By kind of accident. Nope. Eh. So throne is house, bread, and stairs. No. Throne was those steps. And wait, what was the word? Oh yes, yeah. But you read it in this order. House. Yeah. That's the word for throne. Set. I'll erase that in a second. Where was I? It's also very complicated glyphs all put together. Oh god. Worst owl of the night. Okay. Almost done. Yeah, so I used to be very good at putting that glyph, and now I'm really bad. And this is the same papyrus roll, but it's vertical. The steps are literally, I can check, but I'm pretty sure it's literally just steps. I'm pretty sure it just literally is a glyph for... stairway. Yeah, that's it. Although, let me check something briefly. Oh wait, I lied. That's not what that is. There is a stairway that looks like this, but this is a specific stairway. Where'd it go? It's really long and tall. I think it's literally depicting a chair, but let me check. It's Q1 in the sign list that you can link to. Where's Q? Oh, right here. It's a seat. That's what it is. It always looks like a staircase, but it's actually specifically a seat. Like the person would sit like this. So yeah, so it literally is depicting a throne. But there is a separate glyph that is an actual staircase that's more long and wide. Does that make sense? Okay, so for this one, oh, gotta click the brush. But yes, does that technically just mean Isis's name is like throne? Yeah, kind of. So that is one word. That is one word. That is one word. This 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 is sort of one word. This is one word. Small word. And then that. So we have EU, which is for new sentence. This is wedge N. This is cha T. This is ked. This is sesh. Sesh. There's no, it's just like one letter. Sesh. Pair. F N. Sehenet. M. And then Ma'ut. So, I want you guys to really try this. So, as I write down what the definitions are, I really want you to try to put this together because I believe in you guys. This one's not that hard. So, Wedgen means to command. Shati means vizier. Ked is a verb meaning to build. Sesh is a pool. A pool. N can mean at or in. Pair is a house. FN in this case is going to be the F is going to be his, and the N is going to be oh, this is a specific pronoun. So very good. It is a completed action. Very, very good. So that you can tell would need a dot, and then you technically don't put the equal sign when there's a full noun as the subject, but I like to put it there so you can see what the subject is. And so this is possessive, so you put that equal sign in there. Shot is the country, like not the city, like the country, not like a country like we see it now, but like the country, we'll say countryside. Countryside. M is going to be No, fudge cakes. What's N? The tiny words I always kind of forget. I get them all mixed up with each other, unfortunately. What the heck is M? Fudge. In. Yeah, that's what I thought. This is 2. N is 2, M is in. And then this is new or anew. So, does anyone want to take a stab at it? So remember, it is a completed action, which means it is a segem NF or a perfective or perfect. So sort of in the past. Sort of. Anyone want to take a stab at it? At least take a stab at the verb part here in the front. What does these two say? I'm going to eat corn nuts until I get an answer. I'm going to be that annoying teacher that just sits there and waits for somebody to answer. I believe in you, Paranoid. Oh no, I lost my place. Oh, my eyes are so tired. Yeah, you guys got it. So, the vizier commanded the building. It's like this is sort of an infinitive, but it's like he commanded the building of it, so it's not, it's an infinitive, like not really. Or to build, you can still say commanded to. It sounds weird with it, like, but it can be very easily to build. So if you do the building, it has to be the building of, but to build the building of a pool at his. So I thought it was, when I wrote this originally, I thought it was, because you guys both didn't include the last word. So I thought it was going to be his new countryside home, but it actually is at his countryside house anew. So the other way you can actually say it, he commanded, you can also say the rebuilding of a pool. Like it says anew, like they're doing it again. So you guys got it. The vizier commanded the building of a pool at his country house anew. You guys did a very good job. I'm very proud of you guys. But yeah, I think that is where we are going to end. This was my quiz time. That is the question. Is the house or the pool new? According to my notes, that the house is not new. The pool is new. That they are rebuilding the pool. But yeah, it is hard because I think that is a special word that it might be. I don't know, honestly. I'm going to say I really don't know because I don't have any specific notes telling me that it is, which one is the new one. But because it is so close to the word because it's closer to the word house, I would think that they are both, that both country and new are describing the house. And so the house might be new. That's what I would posit. Because it's, if the pool was new, then new should be next to the word per pool, because adjectives follow the noun that it's describing. All right, there's gonna be an ad, but I will prep any questions that you guys have, and then we will go find somebody to go raid. Is this the cutest little GIF you've ever seen? But I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you learned something.